My name is Nizam. Actually, I'm not supposed to be the head of the panel. We have some movements attending to the panel, but nonetheless, this is an issue that's close to heart. 12 years ago, I was also involved in the leadership panel, and there were string of controversies that arose from that. I think the approach today is leadership in civil society is an area which is very important to the community. But let's look at something that's I would say not controversial, but it's the spirit of how we can be guided on what we think is good for the community. Now, initially we had actually a separate panel for young and emerging professionals. We decided to collapse that panel to the leadership panel because we think there are synergies to be drawn. But then we just kick off with the strategies and recommendations of the clients. We'll revisit this in a while. The overarching strategy, as I mentioned in the earlier presentation, is that we hope for MMOs to move into new social space as key national civil society players. We pitched it deliberately as MMOs because this convention is for the government. And we think that's the direction that MMOs should take. Having said that, I think what we really hope to say is that EMP is prepared in that direction. And that's a rethinking on our part. It's consistent with our views on the issues that is faced by the government. And so the first leg is on repositioning MMOs as organizations that engage at the national level, looking at inter-ethnic issues, having an issue-oriented agenda, even if it cuts across different communities. And the key vehicle for this is the Community Forum of Competition. I'll talk about this more detail shortly. And not forgetting our young and emerging professionals, we have a good strong leaders. We need to tap on these as the kids of growth, catalysts of change for the community. The background, this was the 2010 reflection for those of you who are not around special user basis. It's funny in the audience. A lot of the thinking, the underlying thinking behind the proposals is how we can strengthen the effectiveness of the effectiveness. We have got a MMOs here. There's a high rate of volunteerism. But the question now is, how do we make sure that we become more effective? When we did the perception survey for the black box, again we found that a lot of the issues raised by Malays are actually national or Singaporean issues. High cost of living, competitiveness, how we cope with high housing prices. And we feel that there's a need for EMP to participate in national agenda. Interestingly, when we had a 20th anniversary dinner last year, ESMCO and SMCO suggested that EMP move to the national arena and contribute to that front. So it's interesting there was a controversy in thinking. So we didn't promise to do that, but in relation to CLF, I mentioned this in the presentation. We are supportive of CLF. EMP is part of CLF. We are participating part and we will continue to be part of CLF. The Community Leaders Forum was implemented some years after the last convention where EMP voted for the leadership idea, which for reasons that all of us are aware we not received it. But we are heartened that CLF was formed as a vehicle to coordinate leadership in the community. And as I mentioned to you earlier, we have seen emerging scenarios involving political landscape post the last general elections. I think that Singaporeans crave for diversity of views. For those of us who have been around longer, I think we'll be seeing the developments that is happening in Singapore, especially social media, is something quite peculiar in the life. But it's interesting. We have never seen a diversity of opinions, and a lot of them are critical of policies. Some probably over-critical. But the point really is this: Singaporeans crave for more openness, for more diversity of views. I mentioned the fact that we have a total community. people want to participate in policy making. And what questions the role of civil society? I think, and that's where there is a question mark in my view. I'm not sure where we are in terms of growing civil society. When the whole concept of civil society first became popular in Singapore many years ago, George Hill made a speech about the banyan tree and the things civil society flourish. Then we saw groups like Round Table, Zoo, part of that, come and go. It seems to be a bit of a tango between government and civil society. We move forward, we move backwards. We're not sure whether the dance is altogether pleasing to those of us who watch it. But I think we can postulate that in light of what happened in May last year, Singaporeans want more diversity of views, opinions, and I think there is space for civil society to flourish in Singapore. There is space for Singaporeans, including the community here, to participate in policy, to offer its views and opinions in a matter that is still ongoing in the interest of Singapore as a whole. And not forgetting our views, again, as I mentioned, it's an accident at that point, how do we do so? Now, our key strategy is MNOs, enter new space, social space that's actually civil society. I mentioned earlier in the presentation that this whole issue of whether we characterize Malay problems as issues belonging to the Malay community should be further rethought. This really should be looked at as national issues because they can't cross different communities. Because as a government, I should be concerned with any part of the Singaporean community next to country, even if one particular ethnic group is overrepresented in that group that is actually behind the Malay community. And this whole point about letting MNOs carry the burden of Malay problems on their shoulders, or problems that are supposedly Malay, in my view, might be very effective. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Which one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Thank you, sir. Collective wisdom of the community as well. Now, I think there have been a lot of efforts done by the MNOs, and we acknowledge that there are various contributions. So I think the time has come for us to look at how we can position MNOs to be more effective in engaging the state and the community on various issues. And so we think that there is space for MNOs to venture into the national arena. I mentioned the civil society point earlier. And the picture is there for a reason. The AMP had a committee review for earlier this year. And what was slightly different was this. We didn't talk about the Malay issue. We talked about an issue that we think interests every Singaporean. So this was in March this year. We spoke about the role of new media, social media, how it has changed the lives of Singaporeans, etc. And I think that was one example of us trying to move beyond the Malay community issue. So we invited non-Malay speakers. Eugene was there. He's now an MP. Chairman George was there. He's Muslim, but not coming from the Malay community. So the whole idea is, I think there is space for MNOs to look beyond the community. Of course, we have the Malay Muslim community's interests at heart, but certainly when we approach things, we can take a broader perspective. And so the proposition is that MNOs can have an MNC-centric posture, but we gradually engage into the national arena. And we think that will enhance the presence of MNOs on the national stage by doing that. And over time, MNOs will evolve to organizations to view beyond issues affecting the community directly. So that's the issue of branding, how people see organizations like EMP. Now, the second recommendation is really looking at the platform or the vehicle to implement this strategy, and that's COM4. So we see it as a platform to discuss MNC-centric issues, and that complements the CLF. I think at this point in time, people are saying, why form another platform in the CLF? And it goes back to the more fundamental question, why have many Malay Muslim organizations which we have just one? And I think the response really is this. We can debate this later on, that there is more than enough issues within the community for us to tackle. In fact, the problem is that we don't have enough help or helping hands around to address this whole set of issues. Why have EMP when there's been nothing? That is a question that was discussed in the first convention. And I think over the years, I think I would hand on heart say that EMP has contributed in the space in the community. It complements what Malay is doing or what other MNOs are doing. There is a space that we find ourselves in. I think what's more important is that we do so in the spirit of collaboration. We understand the core strengths of each organization, we understand what we represent for. EMP has always postured itself as an independent organization. We are guided by a purity of purpose. We are guided by what we think is the best for the community. We will speak up for the community when we need to. We are not guided by any political aspirations. And I think there is space for an organization like that in Singapore. We reach out to professionals. There are not that many compared to the other communities. And again, coming back to the platform, similarly, I think there is space for the platform like COM4 within the community. There is space for an organization that is independent like EMP to present views on the community. And we complement the other ongoing efforts by other MNOs. We complement and we continue to support CLF. Now, I think it's important for COM4 to feel the pulse of the community. We believe in the ground approach that was the approach for this convention, and that should continue in COM4 going forward. One way of looking at it is that you can look at it as mini conventions that happen on a more regular basis. Through the pulse of the community, we might take perception surveys like we did for this. When you have time, please go to the perception survey results. They're actually quite interesting. We didn't have the time to present that and really do justice to black box research. But we think it's maybe useful to have a bite-sized perception survey done prior to each COM4. And we think it's important to brainstorm ideas by members of the community at COM4 going forward. MNO leaders, community leaders, as well as members of the public. I mentioned the perception survey point. But importantly, I think we see COM4 as complementing the convention process. A lot of people have asked, how do you it's well and fine, you have this big convention, you talk about these high, noble ideas, but very high building ideas. But do you actually do anything after that? And I think this time around, we are committed to make it happen. So like Azmun mentioned, we will form a program unit at EMP that will actually look at the nuts and bolts of the strategies. So we are at the level where we are proposing this to the community. We can debate these strategies at a very high level. But I think this is something that the community needs to be better at, that's implementing. So we always have an issue of implementing strategies. We have no shortage of ideas, to be honest. So how do we actually realize and implement these strategies? Looking at very basic issues like who do we work with. These are ideas for the community. EMP is prepared to do certain programs immediately. COM4 is one example. We will do it. We will do it instead. But there are other programs which might need a little bit more help. We can't do it alone. And we will be first to put our hands and say, look, we don't have all the expertise or resources to do it. But we think the community needs to do this because that's where the gap exists. We want to work with other MNOs. So some of you are here representing your organizations. If you think any of the strategies resonate with you, please come to us. And we really want to have a sincere, earnest discussion how we can work together. And so coming back to COM4, COM4 will track the progress of the implementation of the strategies of the convention going forward. Right? We want to put our money where our mouth is. If we need the response, we will. If we need to get funding from the states, we will ask. If we need help from other MNOs, we will ask as well. But in terms of the process, it is important for us to track the progress of each strategy. It is important for us to put in the milestones for each step of the way so that we can end up where we want to be. It is important for us to keep track of how much resources we need. And all these will be discussed at council. And I think, consistent with what I mentioned earlier, it is also important for COM4 to take a broader approach beyond the community and to look at national issues. You know, for instance, the whole debate about immigration is a national issue. And we have shied away, the community has not really thought hard, in my view, about the impact of the immigration issues on the community. Another example is when we talk about widening income gaps and social safety nets. I think the community should be more interested in the others. Why? Because we are overrepresented in the lower income groups. But yet, we don't really see many MNOs, and AMP is guilty of that, I must confess. We haven't really thought hard about it. About what it means for us, and what kind of, we are really at a phase where we are maybe in the 100-meter race, we are 20 yards behind. And with a widening income gap, Gini coefficient going up, we are probably going to be 25 yards behind. So we need to think about the impact of these. If we need to re-strategize our efforts, we should do so. So the point is, national issues affect the community. When we talk about dysfunctional families, it's not just a function or a problem of the Malay community. We have Chinese dysfunctional families, Indian dysfunctional families, and I would say that a lot of it is a function of the widening income gap, more than an ethnic-based issue. It's not so much a function of Malays being inherently inclined to have dysfunctional families. It is a case where we are being pushed down in terms of the income bracket. If we were struggling before, we're going to struggle twice as much, because at the lower levels, you will find foreign workers coming in, they're cheaper labor, wages are going to go down at this bracket. What do we do as a community? If we are overrepresented in the especially in the cluster 3 jobs that I mentioned earlier in this month's presentation. Now, come to the third recommendation. This is something that I think some areas have done. I think we have seen some collaboration.
Sorry, can we interrupt, or we have to wait until everything finishes?
If you want to raise a question, that's fine. You can raise
About
it.
the contour. Is it the result of AMP so-called dissatisfaction with CLF? The remark that AMP refers to CLF being top bottom and should be bottom up. And what are the differences between CLF and contour? Well, then there won't be any friction or duplication. So much so that we saw the need to have contour, which is for many perhaps to have the old wine in the new bottle.
Thank you. Next question.
Could I just suggest, I think, for the sake of the overall benefit of the game, I mean, it's only relevant, but may I suggest that you be allowed to finish your presentation, and because I sent you a lot of finish, and then you can break out. Because otherwise, I mean, it's an important question. A lot of other side questions you might already know. If you start detecting and so on. I'm sorry. Thing is that there are repeated points again. Okay, so I'm wondering when you finish. So let's take a look.
Well, we're finishing 2 minutes ago.
I feel that we are interjecting ourselves, which would be a dialogue. Because rather than delivering another lecture, we should have a very dynamic dialogue whereby we can participate and chat SMS, rather than the usual format that we listen to you, and when you finish, and probably you have forgotten of what we want to ask, then you come in. So it's more dynamic and more creative response to that. It's not interjection.
I think we're having a debate about this. I was actually about to mention about 1 or 2 slides. The intent actually have a 20-25 minute presentation, and then we have actually about 2 hours of Q&A. So that's unless you want to have a very lunch. Okay, but let me address the point, because I think it's a burning issue, and I think it's an important one. Now, if we go back to the point of, fundamentally why AMP exists, right? You could say, why have AMP when fundamentally is there? I know there are no people that are here, but let's take it in the spirit of what we think is best for the community. AMP has always had its convention process once every 10 years. But we think we need to strengthen this because once in every 10 years is just, honestly, it's just too infrequent. And so every speakers say, oh gosh, how's this issue for 10 years? Now it's, to a certain extent, it's not new, you are right. We are doing the committee review forum every year that we organizes on behalf of the committee. The difference is this. As a platform, this will be a broader and deeper platform compared to CIR. It's also different because we will be introducing things like perception surveys which we have not done before for CIRs. It's also different because we are looking at the national agenda right now, or focus on that, not quite the same previously. It's also different because we are now, in earnestness, tracking the implementation of the strategies of the convention, which was not the case previously. What guided us was because we see a need to do this. AMP remains supportive of CLF. Since you raised the topic, yes, I think there is space, in our view, for CLF to become more open or transparent, especially at the level where it's being managed. We know, I think we had our conversation with our colleagues previously, that CLF does allow programs to come through. It's a very grounds-up approach, if you like. But I think the issue that EMP has raised previously was that we think it can be improved in terms of representation and the way that it is being organized. But let me say this, we are organizing the CONFOR not because of our dissatisfaction with CLF. That wasn't the case. It was because we saw a need for the community to have this forum. We are improving what already has been put in place, but with many, many add-on improvements. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, can I move on? Or would you like to go on to the first?
No, you don't have to ask my permission.
I'm just sensing that you might have another question you want to throw. You can have that further.
Too many questions, too short of time.
Okay. Why EMP? I'll just very quickly go to this because we want to get onto the Q&A. The idea is to form a network of young and emerging professionals. We recognize in this world that it's very hard to have one single body and you claim ownership about every young and emerging group within Singapore. The other is to form a network of networks where we work with various groups in offering programs that empower these groups on leadership issues, to think critically about the community, to excite them or giving back to the community. So we think it's important to mobilize and empower youths, but afford them with the intellectual freedom to do so. I think the young need space for them to develop their own ideas. And we hope that this can widen the space for debate and policy analysis. And hopefully this will pave the way for future expert cadres of policymakers and leaders in the community. And overall, it will strengthen the community as a policy actor in the future. And importantly for our youths, it gives them the confidence to engage community and national leaders when they are empowered to do so. So I think this complements the comfort process very well. So this is a strategies and recommendations at a glance. And that really is the end of my presentation. So we have almost 2 hours to have a debate. So I open the floor to anybody to raise questions. There's some house rules. Please introduce yourself before you ask questions. So everybody knows everybody. And please get to the question. Yes, Ken.
I think there's one basic issue with the coordination. Talking about leadership, right? The question of the government not fostering this has led to many other issues. For instance, jobs, and we are deprived of certain jobs, that this also affects the upbringing of the children.
Can you also let us know what the organization is from?
For instance,
Where you come from? You come from an organization?
no, I don't know my organization. Okay, I would like to continue. For instance, when the government, I would not like to mention certain things about not trusting the Malays into certain sectors of the government, right? this has created distrust against the Malays on a very general level.
Can you all hear me? The question was, let me just summarize the question. The question was on trust, and that's one gap that we have not addressed. He cited the example of NSAF, where it creates the perception that Malays are not to be trusted. It cuts across different segments. Did I understand?
Yes, correct.
I think we acknowledge that there is an issue. That's always been an issue. I think there has been previous engagement with the government on the SAF issue. There was a closer session at one point in time. We had, you will recall, we continued then. And we acknowledge that that's an ongoing issue. In fact, we have perceptions the way the SAF issue is pointed out as an issue that's still alive. I think we have engaged the government previously. We will not stop engaging. But to put as a convention proposal engage on the SAF issue, I think we don't really making new ground. So the question is, let's the structures, let's focus on the broad approach. The SAF issue is not forgotten. I think we can think about how we can best engage the government on that. But I think there are also other issues that we need to address.
You see, I'm not talking only SAF as only entity, right? When you mention distrust against them, it cuts on the general level. Every second, everybody that listens to what they're saying, believe what they're saying. In the end, we are being deprived of certain jobs.
You're talking about jobs now.
Yeah, I mean the basic issue is that job is the most important thing to raise children and to create a more vibrant community. So if we are being deprived of certain sectors of then where you know 70% of the Malays went to IT, right? So these people come from IT, they will, most probably they will occupy what kind of job? A job that the government will not trust us. So that's my
Okay, the point that was raised again was on the issue of jobs and employment. I think discrimination in employment. Again, there is a real issue. I agree with you, there is discrimination in Singapore. I agree with you, some of them might not be obvious, some of them might be cloaked under, we only hire Mandarin speaking people. And sometimes, even when a Malay worker speaks Mandarin, we don't hire the Malay workers. And these are issues that we have engaged the government on. These are real issues, and we have engaged the state on this. And I think generally the state is sympathetic towards that, and it has actually tried to do something to work with the employers to make sure that there's no discrimination. But again, it's not an easy thing. We think more can be done, but again, I think the issue before us right now is, those are specific issues, but let's look at the structure that will allow the community to engage the state on issues like this. Because you can take taking a national approach, you can argue that it is in the best interest of Singapore, which is an economic entity, for employers to hire the best talents, whether you're Malay, Chinese, Indian, or others. And therefore, if you have a meritocracy, let's have a real meritocracy, and let's get the best people for the jobs, even if they come from ethnic minorities. And I think we have made comments like this in terms of encouraging companies to have a more diversity-like policy. That has been done.
Since you talk about meritocracy, right, I would like to touch on meritocracy.
Sorry, can we get someone else to ask a question? Please.
Hi, my name is Amrin. I just want to respond quickly.
Can you get a mic, please?
Hi, my name is Amrin. Can you hear me?
No, I don't think so.
Testing.
Amrin, please, my
Hi, my name is Amrin. I just want to make a quick point on the defense issue of trust. I think it's important not to get too focused on one area. I think, yes, it's an important issue, has been acknowledged, but there are many areas where trust is not an issue. For example, engineering, biotechnology, and these are areas I think a community should focus on instead of being so fixated on a particular sector. And I guess the point is that how many of us really want to be in the army, not that there's something wrong being an army officer. The second point is, I think, the point about discrimination. I think that is a problem, yes, but the real solution to discrimination is, I think, education. You have to be so damn good that, you know, it's very difficult for others to deny your place, and I think that's where we want to be at. And a good example is the Jewish community in New York. They were highly discriminated back in the 60s, but look at where they are now. I think that's important for us to put things in perspective and see that, you know, and not point the finger at others. And in fact, and I think we should look from within. On the third point on the issue about whether it's a community or national issue, I think it's important to recognize that there are certain national initiatives, for example, Comcare, upgrading and all that. But having said that, I think there is a need for public sector buy-in to actually help in help the community, and we see that lacking in Singapore. I think there is a need for Malay organizations to partner with private companies to provide diversity initiative programs, and these are partner initiatives where you mentor youths and provide internship opportunities, and even provide diversity initiatives like you mentor small, medium enterprises. And I think this is the way to go, and there is a need for perhaps some government push and for some government leadership on this, and I think we have a big GLC sector that can take the lead on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Amrin, for your suggestions. Amrin is actually a lawyer in a foreign law firm in Singapore who spent some time in New York as education. Yes. So can this person continue?
Assalamualaikum. First of all, I would like to register this point.
So can you introduce yourself?
My name is Jufri, Mohd Jufri. I like to register this point. The fact that the MP wants to be independent is recognized. But being independent does not mean that he cannot take sides when circumstances call for it. Okay, I'll explain that later. All right. We have been talking about many problems, similar problems over the years. So I hope it will not come a time whereby we say, oh, ini masalah lama dah jemu lah. But the point is, although we have been raising these problems over and over again, we have not seen any concrete solutions. Right? For instance, I'd like to ask everybody here, how many of us really know what our defense strategy and defense policy is? I don't think many of us know. But I happen to befriend some non-Malays who serve in the armed forces, and they are in a position to tell you what the national strategy, defense strategy is, and you'll be surprised. You'll be shocked, in fact, not surprised. You'll be shocked at what you hear from them. So the question of not trusting the Malays is an understatement. Okay? And then we have people who are apologists. They don't belong to the government, and yet they want to simplify and apologize and explain government policies which they don't even know what they are talking about. Saying about it's meritocracy, no discrimination. They must rethink. Getting higher qualifications is only the first part of our journey if we want to improve ourselves as a community. The other part, it doesn't mean that you are a professor, you are a top scholar, compete against them. When I say them means the other communities, you can be appointed through merit. Sorry, my friends, that's not the case. It depends on where you are applying your job, who your employees are. So all these things, and I say national, the community's pride is very important. Not being called up for national service is a long-term problem. But what have we done? We have made a lot of noise. But has there been any concrete response that satisfies you as far as the government is concerned? Have they given you the answers that you are seeking? And if they have given you some nonsensical answers, are you happy with that? Because national service doesn't involve getting only our youth, anak-anak kita, to serve in the army. It is also transfer of technology. The psychology is also very important. See, I always got to prove to my non-Malay friends that I must be loyal to Singapore. You see, when I say transfer of technology means if you serve in the Army, the Navy and the Air Force, you are exposed to new technology which our children will be deprived of. So it goes further than just depriving us from serving national service. It also affects other sectors. When they retire, their potential for getting good paying jobs through the skills which they acquire in the armed forces. So please, my fellow Singaporeans, I hope you don't take it. Okay, what happens? After you press the government just ignores you. What are you going to do? No, we are independent, we cannot take sides. Can you take a stand? So what are we going to do? Live with it for another 30 years and have another convention and bring up the same issues again? By then, many of us here won't be around. So we have to find a solution to these once and for all. And please don't have that mentality of, well, the government is right, they know what to do. No, we accept whatever they give you. We are talking about meritocracy. We are not talking about, mari tu dia kasih. Dia tak kasih, tak dapat. Mari dia kasih. Not meritocracy. So when we qualify, we still have to prove ourselves. They don't trust you. So please let us all be more proactive in our approach and don't take no for an answer easily.
So what do you suggest?
I suggest we press on. Don't keep on saying that you are independent, you cannot take sides. You have to take sides. You see, like the immigration policies, we just had a dialogue, bloggers dialogue. Alex Au and our Mr. Zaki Mohammed was there, and he seems to be defending government policies. Even the immigration policy, he says that, Malays in the region won't want to come to Singapore and be citizens because they will lose their majority status and their Bumiputra status. So they won't want to come. So I related an incident where I met a professor from the Institute of Technology, Bandung. I asked him, Bapak, benarkah orang-orang Indonesia enggan berkonsultasi di Singapura? Dia bilang, siapa cakap? Berapa kapal kau muat? So they are spreading lies, and I challenge him. I ask, you tell your government how many people you want. Even if you employ them as bus drivers, although they have qualifications from the Institute of Technology, Bandung, or bus mechanics, pay them 1,500, 1,200, they'll be very happy. This is what the professor told me, And I challenge him, how many you want? I'll work with the professor and bring these shiploads of people here. So don't give me all this nonsense. Thank you.
Just respond on this point. Let me just explain what being independent means. Being independent doesn't mean that we will not have a position or a stand. And the stand that we have taken on the SAF issue is that we think that it is discriminatory. We have seen so in our engagements, various engagements, dialogues such as we have with ministers. Now, being independent really means that when we do something, we don't have a political agenda, we're not getting political mileage out of this, because we are not a political organization. Being independent means whatever position that we take is what we think is in the interest of the community. One example that I think we can cite is when Mr. Lee Kuan Yew wrote his book on hard truths, and there was a point about Malays not integrating. ANP, being independent, thought that it was important for the community to raise its objection to the statement that was made. And as a result of ANP's statement, there was a retraction, and Mr. Lee Kuan Yew said he stood corrected, and then we see the other statements made that suggesting that they don't agree with this position taken by Mr. Lee. Just one example of independence. It doesn't mean that we will not take a position, but I think I really want to refocus on where we are this morning. I think we acknowledge that the SAF issue is a problem. I accept it's not just an issue of people not being able to go to the army. I accept it creates a further perception problems that Malays are not to be trusted in relation to other aspects, for instance, employment. We realize that there are even some issues of madrasah students not being taken in for national service. That creates an issue. But I think there has been no shortage of engagement on the government, whether it's a public engagement or behind closed doors. And I think we will still need to continue with that. I agree with you. But I want to refocus the thinking this morning. There are issues where we know that the government, rightly or wrongly, holds a particular position, and whether we can get more mileage out of that, having a discussion like that is something we can talk about. But I think there are also other important things that we need to look at in the community in terms of how we measure the progress in the community. Look, we have got problems in education. We've got social issues. I think these are the real issues that we need to lift ourselves on. We don't forget the other important issues, of course. But I think let's take a holistic view of where we are right now, where we want to be, and what's the cleverest way of doing so. Dr. Mahmoud.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ahmad Mahd, and I'm here in a personal capacity. I'd like to spend a few minutes just talking about the macro perspectives affecting our community. First and foremost, I just would like to reiterate the enormous problems still besetting our community as presented by you earlier in the earlier session. I think the challenges facing Singapore, and more so that of our community, is enormous if we look at the shape of things to come. The world has changed. We are directly plugged to the globalized world, as you have indicated in your presentation. And the next 2-3 years, looking at what's happening in Europe, in the United States, and even here in Asia with a slowing of China and so on, I think the challenges confronting our country and more so the Malay Muslim community is significant. I think considering what is coming our way, there is an urgent and important need for us to create awareness about all these significant challenges facing our community. I think relative to this, what is currently lacking is engagement. By way of engagement, we can create all these significant challenges that's coming our way. A slowing economy where jobs are at stake, and the need for then everyone to keep themselves relevant to the changing needs of the globalized world, of the economy, and how they can continue to be plugged to the changing state of things.
and particularly that of jobs. And I'd like to also echo what Amrin has said earlier on about the important need for education. I think this has been said many times over, but I think it's worth a reiteration that education is indeed the cornerstone to ensuring a bright and successful future for the community. So I think moving forward, there is an important need for us to keep stressing the important need of education so that with proper education, with tertiary education, I think people can think and move forward in not only making themselves successful, but hopefully once individuals are successful, they can then make a bigger and wider contribution to the community. The other thing is relative to what you said earlier on about this COM4. I see some relevant points there, but I think we should not belabor ourselves into just simply having forums. There are already so many of such forums, such as the Community Leadership Forum, which brings the community together. We need to really examine whether there is indeed another need for us to have forum after forums. I'd like to quote what Joel Alderbacher said. We have all set a vision for ourselves to be a model Muslim community, but Joel Alderbacher said, vision without action remains a dream. Action without vision just passes the time. But vision with action can change the world. I think it is really time for all of us as a community to really get coordinated, to really get together to address all these issues, problems besetting our community, and really create common strategies that can hopefully resolve some of these major issues that are confronting our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad Magad. For those of you who are not aware, Dr. Ahmad Magad was former member of Parliament and he was also chairman of the EMP time back. Just to respond on your issue of the forum and whether we have too many top shots, I think that's the sense that I get from your comments. I think we need vision and action, so I think we are all fully aligned with that. And I think vision without action is just a waste of time as a top shot. And I think when we look at the COM4, it is really meant to make sure that we have action that complements our vision. Because as I mentioned earlier, COM4 is meant to be a vehicle that tracks the implementation of the strategies. And it is something that maybe we could have done a little bit better in the past, where there were strategies, but maybe there wasn't a process where we actually track whether we are actually doing what we say needs to be done. And I think COM4 is meant for that. So I can assure you that that's the case. And whether we have one or more or two more forums, I think maybe the difference is that we have designed this to be more grounds-up approach. And I think CLF might have a different approach or orientation. They are doing lots of good work, but maybe the way that it's being run has a certain orientation. It might not cover the same set of issues that we will cover here at an EMP event, because really we are independent, and I think there's a bit more latitude for us to discuss issues affecting the community in an independent setting like that. So I would think that there is still value, but again I go back to my earlier point. I think the point is not about a problem of having multiple platforms. The issue is really that I think it's good to have a diversity of platforms. You represent different perspectives, but ultimately is how you are guided by the same mission, which is to have a community of excellence, but there might be different ways, and I think we should celebrate the of roots to get to that point. So the gentleman first, and then we dive in.
Auzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh kepada semua. Selamat pagi. Nama saya Malik bin Ismail. Saya daripada Pertubuhan Kebangsaan Melayu Singapura. In English is Singapore Malay National Organisation. Dalam perkara ini, on this matter, yes, we share the same sentiment on our representation, especially in government sectors, especially in public sectors. I do a small research about schools. Do we all know how many secondary schools we have in Singapore? We have about 120 over to 130 over schools. And do you know that how many Malay principals we have? We have about 7 to 8 Malay principals. And then you talk about primary schools, we have about 120 over and probably 130 over primary schools. And do you know how many principals, Malay principals we have? Also it's about the same, about 7 to 8%. It's not well represented. These are government, public sector. What I'm going to share, which I have here, about reposition MMOs. What I'd like to give some suggestion is that MMOs to sit down together, look at what are the critical problem issues that Malay are facing, categorize them, what can be tackled within the MMOs, and what is supposed to be given back to the government in order for them to take this responsibility. Sit down, look what are the priorities, what are the concerns, what can be tackled by our own Malay organisation, and what's supposed to be given back to the government to look into this. This is my suggestion for the first pillar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think what you suggest is actually very consistent with what we want to do. Getting views, if we need from the community, and if we need on a particular issue to engage the state, we will. And I think this convention is also reflective of that approach. We have, when we come up with strategies, it was a very constant approach. We went to the various MMOs, we got individuals involved in the process, and now we have these breakout sessions where we can have more intimate discussions. We're going to have a session with the Prime Minister later to engage him on various issues. So fully agree with you on that approach. That lady, Daki, and then the two of you.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum. My name is Norani Abubakar, and I'm from Malaysia. So I hope my comment, if it's not supported with strong background, please excuse me. I'm from the neighboring country. I would like to give a comment to Amrin about what you shared. You mentioned about being more competent so that one will not be discriminated, or one will be more accepted. In my opinion, discrimination has nothing to do with competency. I think, and while hearing from what has been discussed, I feel that there are two things. First is the issue of collective and psychological memory, which can be addressed through a more strategic. My voice is loud, so. So I feel that the first issue is really the psychological and the collective memory that you cannot run from. It is a part of Singapore history since 1965. That's an issue that people have to come together to reconcile. And psychological issue, emotional issue, has more to do than policies. That's the first thing. And what are the strategies the government have done, Singapore government? I've seen, being a Malaysian, I say, wow, wonderful thing Singapore government has done. And it's a good beginning, but I think we have to be realistic that it will take time. So I think that's one thing that is in place but can continue. So I applaud your country for such a good progress. The second thing is the policy. And I think when it comes to discrimination, one should never tolerate discrimination, whether because of your ethnic background or your gender or your age. So what's the policies being a civilized country like Singapore, there must be policies in place. And there's so many policies that Singapore has initiated. So I see that one has to come sincere to say that the policies must be in place. And the minority should not tolerate saying that we are not as competent, therefore we should accept discrimination.
Thank you for your perspective from across the causeway, and I think we fully agree with you. Discrimination in any form or type should not be permitted or tolerated at all. In fact, just to share with you, we have at different points in time also tested the waters. We suggested that maybe it's time for, given that lack of representation in various sectors like schools and school principals. And I think if you look at the other educational committees, you will find zero Malay representation, not just at the principal's level, but our research shows that that is in fact the case. How many High Court judges do we have? How many perm secs do we have? How many top CEOs do we have? How many Malay companies are there listed on the Singapore Exchange? Only one. Now maybe it's time also to look at asking for promoting diversity, which is not quite the same as affirmative action. So now we're going to meritocracy. But maybe it's time for people to embrace minorities being in companies. I come from a US firm, and before that I worked in a couple of other US firms. And the US firms have got this policy of encouraging diversity. So if I'm the hiring manager, I hire minorities, I hire a woman, or in the US context, I hire an Asian, I hire someone who's handicapped. That goes well in my KPI as a hiring manager. So maybe it's time. We have suggested this privately to the state, and we're not against it, but maybe the trick is how we can implement it in a small way. So that's something that we can look into. Not just, Amrit's point was made to be overqualified to get the same job, and I think that's probably worth, I think it's good for us to set high standards, but again, coming back to the point, discrimination is out, and in fact, we want to have a position where people celebrate diversity or minority representation. Lucky.
Thank you. My name is Stanley. Actually, I just want to make a point about procedures. There's so many people here. I'd like to hear more views. So, if I may suggest, if there are any comments, criticisms about AMP about the recommendation, or Nizam not to take the burden of answering and respond, but I'd like to hear other people respond to it so that we can hear the divergence of views. Because AMP may not defend itself by anything, I would say. But to be more productive, I would like to hear, if you can facilitate to hear issues, the same issues discussed so that we don't move from one to another. Each one issue they move to another. I think that will be more productive. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mahmud. So I'm an ex-Malay language teacher, but now I'm helping Madrasah Ma'arif as a chairman. First, I would like to congratulate AMP for having this seminar or convention, and the research we have done is wonderful. I would agree that AMP have this compo because Mendaki, maybe there is a Mendaki here, has a CLF, but it is more exclusive. But I find that compo that you are establishing is more inclusive. You will invite everybody, I suppose, who are interested in the development and the achievement of Malay and Muslim community in Singapore. It is wonderful. So I personally will support this idea. Secondly, I would like to touch on the question of leadership. It is good if in future maybe AMP has a survey or study on the leadership, Malay Muslim leadership in Singapore. Because you may have a lot of strategies, you have a lot of initiatives by organizations, by AMP and so on. But if the leadership, especially political leadership, do not support, it will not be successful. So I think political leadership is very important. And over time you hear the government say, oh, we have met Malay leaders, we have met Muslim leaders. In fact, when I talk to some professionals and some politicians who are my friends, they say, actually in Singapore, we have leaders who are Malay, but they are not Malay leaders. So some quarters are not happy with that statement, you see, and they ask me why. I said, because some leaders, when I ask them to bring up or raise issues on Malays and Muslims, they are very reluctant. I give, for example, you don't know, maybe all of you, or maybe most of you do not know that when the CE was introduced, madrasah was, all madrasah must take PSLE in order to register primary one. Otherwise, you can only register primary 4. Where in the world we have a system, start studying at primary 4. So Muslim organization, AMP, Jamia, Pergas, KTMS and so on, and Muslim teachers disagree, and we had a discussion with Mr. Goh Chok Tong, then the Prime Minister, at Parliament House. Then they give way. So, okay, you must take PSLE in order to register primary 1. You know, last year, this I don't know whether you call it discrimination or what, I don't know. But the thing is, the primary school people who want to take primary 6 exam from madrasah, they have to pay $42, and from national schools, $19. What do you call it? I don't know. This was brought up, but MOE stick to that decision. So this is a thing that if our leaders, if I get to some of the leaders, if our leaders are effective, this small matter can be improved. So I think leadership is very important, and I hope AMP, it's okay, you can be independent, but on certain issues, you can be supportive if they are good. Government issues are good, you support. But if government issues are not so good, can be improved, you should criticize, you should improve it. For example, when the M.M. Lee talked about the Malay integration, because we are very religious, I think AMP statement is very, very firm. And not like some other organization who give statement, but like the Malay proverb say, melepaskan batu di tangga. Say for the sake of saying. So, congratulations, AMP. Thank you very much.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning to all. I'm Nizam from Padian. I would like to start the word reposition MMO. We already have community leaders forum in the party. We have AMP convention. I think after this, MMOs will get together, get another topic. Because it seems from the discussion just now that not many people understand what MMOs have done. A little bit sad. And I'm not sure how much AMP has done research or consultation with MMOs, or what MMOs have achieved. So far, we do not understand. It seems that we don't understand for the last 10 years. We don't have to go all the way back. Like I think Yanga yesterday celebrated 80 years of service. That what we have achieved, what has been achieved by the MMOs, how effective they have been. Have you looked into that? I think if you look at Jamia and PKS have shown the way that how effective they have been. And they have also gone into national issues, interethnic issues. The rest of our MMOs have also done that. And not only that, I think if you look carefully in the last 10 years, they have also looked into the renewal of leadership. Some organizations have already renewed their leadership. Some are coming up. So they are also giving the younger people a chance to lead the organization. So I think somehow it seems it's lacking. So if we are lacking that, how can we say reposition MMOs as organizations that engage national issues? I'm a bit puzzled. Maybe MSP can be given here. Because I think it's very, very important for people to understand. Otherwise, people only know what AMP is doing or what Mendaki, which is a bit unfair to the organization, which has been much, much longer in existence before AMP and Mendaki. Like, Yana, 80 years of service, excellent service. So I think we have to understand this. We must make everyone in the Malay community, or even others, to understand this. Otherwise, how can we move on as a community? I don't think AMP and Mendaki can move on as a community by themselves. You need the help of the rest of the Malay Muslim organizations. So the way it is being put up there, I don't think it's so nice. I don't think, I'm not sure how many MMOs presidents are here. Probably I'm the only one here, so I have to say this. Oh yeah, sorry, it's okay, good. So maybe you can say your views on this. But I think we have to do this as well. When you say creating space, yes, you can create space, no problem. No problem in creating space. But can we fill up the space? Can we fill up the space effectively? We don't have enough resources. So that's my view. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Vicky Baruddin. I don't intend to respond. I'm here to persuade you to recalibrate some of the points which I agree, but many of you do not know that one of the hats I now wear is as Vice President of Taiwan, and I tell you why it's relevant to the first pillar. And I see a great opportunity now for ANP to recalibrate. It is one thing to say you want the government to engage you. It's one thing to say that you want to engage the government. It's another thing to take action and do it yourself. Mohd Taiwan was, as you know, a charitable organization on its own. They invited me to be vice president. They then decided, like you, they wanted to be a national organization, but they cannot be unless they reconstitute their organization. So we constituted an organization called Society of Moral Charities that runs the hospitals, schools, separate from the parent Taiwan. And the purpose of doing that is then to give itself both in constitution and ability and funding on its own to engage the nation at large. I mean, it has to take Malay patients as well as Chinese patients. But I believe most of its supporters are Chinese. So I would suggest you go a bit further instead of hoping that you engage to reconstitute some of the Malay organizations to take on national identity and constitution in its own right and occupy that space. I think it's available. I think only those who are ready then should do. So I'm hoping to see that. My second point relates to the last point, which I shared with you a while ago. I've shared that with Darren too long ago. Unfortunately, we didn't have the statistics. A lot of our young people end up a bit too early at the age of 16 in ITE and polytechnics instead of formal education in more structured education in pre-universities. The difference is that they are let out a bit too early at the age of 16 without the benefit of national education, civic education, and a more guided moral education that's available in structured schools. And unfortunately, the statistics are not available to you. I've discovered, I'm in steering committee, that issues of homosexuality, issues of early secondary mental sex, all those things that you mentioned are more prevalent in ITEs and polytechnics because they are much younger and let out with that kind of freedom that they're not ready for. So I would sincerely suggest that the third pillar, to get a group of young emerging professionals to focus back to their
alumni and alma mater. Help those guys who are in IT and you manage this process of becoming adult a bit earlier than they should. And I think that would give you two strong pillars of action.
Thank you for your comments. I take your comments, but I think it's important for me to clarify certain issues. On repositioning MMOs, moving international, it's not meant to critique any MMOs. Let me just be frank to you. The original intention was for that strategy to AMP move into national space. So maybe self-critical of us. But the point is not meant to critique what MMOs have been doing. I think we've done lots of work. We acknowledge that. We have spoken to a lot of MMOs. We presented this to MMO leaders. But the point is, at least from an AMP perspective, we don't see enough MMOs looking at national issues. How many MMOs have spoken up on the issue of demographics and immigration? How many MMOs have addressed the issue of the Gini coefficient, income gaps? And I think we are not suggesting that all MMOs go into this space. I think as Zul rightly pointed out, if an MMO thinks that it is confident enough to move into the national space, take a slightly broader orientation, please do so. I think that really is the point. I think it is important for some MMOs to remain in the community space and do all the good work that you've been doing, even though I know that many of the programs that we offer are also extended to non-Malays or non-Muslims. That is well and good. But I think in terms of positioning of the community, I think a lot of the MMOs are seen as being focused primarily on Malay issues. And maybe it is time for us to widen our wings and look beyond just the immediate community, part of the broader community, because the national issues has got a very big impact on the Malay Muslim community. That is our thinking. It's not meant to be critical, so let me just emphasize that. On your point about leadership and research, I agree, it's very important. If you look at your convention journal, the black box perception study, there is a segment that talks about people's perceptions on leadership and MMOs, and what are the things that they think MMOs should look at. Now, you brought your hands, I'll pass the mic to you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi It's probably, you probably appreciate how challenging this is going to be for me, because there are some things that I would like to comment on as a person rather than CEO of Mendaki, for the sake of interest in terms of developing where our community or where our community effort should go. But I can't avoid the fact that I'm CEO of Mendaki. First of all, I think I congratulate AMP for this. I mean, the statistics that you have shared with us are of course nothing new. We know all this, but we know it in bits and pieces for some. For people like us and people like other MMOs, we have always been looking at those, and we are targeting those statistics in a continuous daily basis. So I really like that, to bring home the point. Second is the strategies. To put it into the fact that you need to improve the infrastructure rather than at the program level, at the infrastructure level, I think is the right thing to do, and we're happy to see it. My reaction to it, as I have shared with you personally also, is that, is this a strategic map for AMP, or is this a strategic map for the community? So I want to share my own personal feeling about this particular pillar of the one of the 6 pillars. I think, repositioning MMOs as organizations that engage on national themes. I agree with Izzuddin. Unless you know how the MMOs actually work, you may not get a very good idea that they are already doing many of these things. The MMO leaders sit on many boards and many committees, and as soon as any of the ministry, or as soon as any of the strategic agencies that want to think about policies as well as guidelines, we are invited on this, myself included. So we are many, not me alone. I mean, all the MMO presidents and executive directors do that too. So we have a voice. We have a voice in these platforms. We also, like what Mr. Parodi suggested, must look out and be more integrated. We don't only open our, when I say we, because I'm head of CILAB, so I know what my partners are doing also. When I say we open our organizations to participation, we do more than just open to participation. We actually work with private as well as other agencies in partnership, right? I think BATPM has worked with ITE long before this idea was mooted, right? BATPM worked with ITE long before Mendaki went in a program to complement that work. So agencies have, our MMOs have been doing that, Perthabis included, PPIS as you have heard, and Jamia, lots and lots of things. So we have done that. So I agree that there may be some thing for you to articulate in terms of what you exactly mean by repositioning MMO as, in the first pillar. Second pillar, I'll be a little bit safe. If I'm not safe, I would say that, is that another word for you know what? I think the CLF has got a lot of potential. It is already there, right? Of course, its pillars needs to be strengthened. Its approach needs to be questioned, right? Its openness, transparency can be increased. But it is a ready format, it is a ready platform where we have come together and worked together and now knows where the cracks are. We are strengthening those cracks. So there is one. So my worry is that, are we going to again, dilute the expertise within the community to then think about CLF, community forum? It's easy for you to say that, oh, we are complementing, we are not taking over CLF, we are not replacing CLF. It's easy for you to say that. But look around you, the expertise, who? Me, you, and you. We have so few of us, who have the expertise as well as the passion and the commitment to want to do this. And we are so torn, we are so divided because they're just these 500,000 people, and probably about 150,000 who really need excruciating position where they need help. Are we going to have another platform, right, to discuss issues? This could be these issues that are discussed at the CLF forum. Of course, your next question would be, why hasn't CLF forum been the way you want it to be? I also ask the same question. So I wonder whether within your thinking, what about the leadership as in building capacity within the MMOs that we talk about? We started with renewal process, right? And if you look at all the MMOs, they are also thinking about that renewal process. We need more. We need more to pair them up with statistics, thinking, perspectives, perhaps even use some kind of scholarship within us. I mean, Rizwan Zafir's scholarship is as an example of how we try to increase the capacity of, organizational capacity of MMO leaders. Because these are going to be the voices within the platforms that they are already there. And if being there and not be able to articulate and not be able to then advocate, then it's the same thing again. You can have that pillar, but you may not have the voices. I like initiating a national young emerging professional. I mean, it may not, I don't think it's initiating because to me, this forum is about, I mean, at the national level, we have a lot of forums and we talk about the emerging professional. But I particularly like this because the young is not Mendakis, the young is not AMPs, the young is not, PPIS, only to hold and to have. Our young are so precious, right? They are community resources and they belong to the community and the community belongs to them. So I like this in particular because we need a focus on developing these emerging professionals and see how they can be seen or they can be harnessed in order to help all within the community. So I'm really not very comfortable with community forum, I can say personally, because I think it is part of what a CLF can do, should do, and can do. And the other thing that I want to say is that inevitably in such a platform, we go back to drilling down on discrimination issues. Inevitably, when we in such platforms, we go back to the number of Malays in such a profession. I think that was 30 years ago. I think we ought to move on, right? We ought to go into what we can do something about, right? Challenging the mindset or challenging the policies that do or do not promote discrimination is going to be a losing for me. I wouldn't spend time on that. The other thing is the conspiracy theory, right? There is somehow a conspiracy theory. Why are we getting only 5.1% people going to the local university and why not? I just went to the education department. You know, I've been going around because I want to get everywhere. The education department, and what did they discuss? They discuss on loans. They discuss on resources. Why is Mendaki not doing this? No, Mendaki not giving this and that. So I'm very sorry that these are bijak pandai. They don't even know how resources are spent and what it means to spend 500,000 for someone who wants to go to Adelaide to do medicine. What does it mean to the rest of the community who need to be helped? So if there is such a conspiracy theory, I question that. 5.1% in the university, look back, look down, look before that. If our PSLE marks and PSLE performance is so high, we're doing so well, at secondary school also we're doing so well, and yet at university we're not seeing our people. Then I will question. So if you go upstream, there's so much work that we need to do even upstream, right? Secondary, A-levels as well as primary level. And if we don't come together, right, to do this together, I don't think any of your recommendation is going to change in the next 30 years, right? It's lip service. It's like, oh, we're not going to be divided, we come together, but look at what we are suggesting, how we do this. Do we need to do this? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Molia, for your very honest views. I've set up the thinking behind COM4 previously. I think maybe we can agree to disagree on this point. But, you know, just to talk about your point about 150,000 people needing help, I think that speaks quite a bit. You know, we have an adult family and youth scheme in EMP, and we are short. You know, we face severe resources constraints. We could reach out to the 20 or 30,000 families that need help, but we only reach out to a few hundred here. And my view is that there's a lot of problems within the community, and we can have a many helping hands approach. I think we've made our position on CLF clear. We are supportive. We think it can be improved. But again, I stress COM4 is not meant to be a challenge in the CLF. It meant to be part of the many helping hands go-to-real approach. Sorry, who would like to ask a question? Can we just have the people who have not asked questions before? Okay, 1, 2, and 3.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I applaud AMP for this convention. I think Ms. Mola from Mendaki is a bit political because I think this is the problem. Leadership, when it comes to leadership, top down, I think the problem is on the top. Okay, AMP, Mendaki is AMP as a competition, as a competitor. So it's the same when the national leaders in parliament or in the government seems to look upon the other leaders as competing. So they want to play down all these competitors. Like now, it seems that Mendaki is playing down AMP. The forum is good, the 3 pillars say is good, the 6 seminar or the forum that we are having is good. So Ms. Mola should be, you know, be supportive of what AMP is doing. No, it's okay, it's okay.
No competition for us. I think I need to explain the self-help group concept. Can I just use that?
See, after I listened to your comment, it seems that you are actually on the worrying part of AMP being competing with Mendaki, with CLF and also. COM4 is good, not to compete with CLF. CLF is a bit not doing something. That's my personal view on a personal capacity. So I think it's from top down leadership. I agree with you, Mahmoud. What is the political leadership? Are they speaking enough? It's not about speaking. It's about from down up. When we engage, or when the community leaders or the citizens speak to the Malay political leaders, are they doing anything? It doesn't seem like they are doing anything or not doing enough. Okay, so it should change. So if we have competing leadership that challenge or engage the national leadership, the government, I think that will be very healthy. It will improve further. So we don't have to wait 30 years down the road, you know, to see SAF or whatever, blah blah blah, to have Malay representation. It is not about Malay, it's about national also. I think I agree with Mr. Jufri with that. The national leaders should be engaged. And don't see us as competing with you. See us as complementing you. Please. Thank you.
Can I respond? And then Molia, I'll let you 2 minutes to respond.
Okay, my name is Azhar, representing myself. If you look at these three, all these three is going to engage the government, like it or not. So how do we engage the government? Now, this week, if you read in the newspaper, the research assistant for Dr. Lee talked about Dr. Lee not having access to information, statistical data, and which are very, very important. Okay? If we are going to engage the government without statistical data, that puts a shinier light on the situation. How are we going to engage the government? How are we going to say that this is the problem? So I'm proposing to EMP that we should be pushing for the government to open up the information. Because if I'm not wrong, even RIMA has a problem getting this data, and Malay also has said you only get bits and pieces. How are we going to say the state of our nation or the state of our community without this data? That's what I'm focusing. Secondly, talking about forum complementing, or let's put it this way: if I were to give two people two torchlight, shine on the same thing, what do you get? A brighter situation. And when you have a brighter situation, what can you get? You can get a better focus to solve the problem. Let us look it in that manner, in that light, in that way that we should be doing. We're putting our energies on the same thing, and we have a brighter thing, and then we can solve the problem better. That's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. I think it's important to get data and fully agree with that. 2 minutes.
2 minutes, yes. Exactly that. I think we need to work with the government. I mean, I'm not political, I'm not a political role. We need to work with the government, and perhaps I need to explain what a self-help group, how it comes about, and what it does have in order for us to use it as a lever to uplift the community. Now, when Mendaki was set up, not the historical, you all know what the history is all about, but the resources that come through Mendaki, right? 40% of it actually come from the CPF, the check of MPMF, right? Of the MPMF, how many of you actually know how it's divided among us? I can bet my money not even 50%, right? So the MPMF naturally goes to Mendaki, and Mendaki therefore not helping the community. So that is very, very frustrating. So if MPMF idea and concept is not even fully understood, then you will not understand how Mendaki operates, for example, right? Now, 40% coming from there as well as other grants. What grants? This is the undisbursed TTFS grant. The logic and the principle of the TTFS is so that we can empower our community to help those who need help. Now, I will not go into the debate of whether in the first place there should have been a TTFS, because some of you here know where you are in terms of the TTFS. But that is the amount of money that has come to us in order to be able to do the many things that we have done. Not us alone, as well as the CLF. Right? We work with AFP and all other Malay Muslim organizations under the CLF banner and fund their programs. Right? And if you talk about competition, we're not interested in the competition, because there's no competition to saving lives, there's no competition to educating the community, and there's no competition to providing housing and job to our people. We should be ashamed if we are thinking competitively. We are thinking of resources. We are thinking of expertise. We are thinking of leverage points. We are thinking of not creating another platform. Right? So that's where I come from. Thank you.
Thank you, Monia. No, hang on. I'll grab the hand first. And I'd like to give opportunity to those levels. No, can you just go to the turn? The lady, yourself, and then you can ask a quick question.
Assalamualaikum everyone, my name is Dania and I'm currently a student. Okay, because I see a lot of youth faces here, and I feel that as we go on to steer our community into a progressive society, we also need to consider all the youths here. So I would like to give some suggestions. I feel that this forum is we're always pointing out a lot of setbacks, but sometimes we should see setbacks as opportunities for us to become better, and there's no blaming who's right and who's wrong. So I would just like to share some suggestions. So let's touch on the Young and Emerging Professionals Forum. So I feel that, okay, let me touch on 3 issues: the social, education, and economic. So for the social issues, I feel that to deal with dysfunctional families, I know that there have been availability of a lot of volunteer welfare organizations such as PPIS, Family Welfare Services, and they all touch, they all may focus on different aspects, but our main goal is actually to aim for, to actually build on the society to develop them. But I feel even if we know that we can improve on certain things, it's not actually opening up like a new organization. I think we should focus on the niche area. So, for example, one of the ways I feel that in helping dysfunctional families, right? Okay, maybe if we cannot help the families, why not we help the youth? Because I believe that it's always the youth who we are going to be the next generation. So there needs to be some education, for example, in terms of financial. Okay, if we were to, I would like to suggest if we open up like a group whereby we can have professionals who are coming from the financial background, because I see the importance of financially educating students, because this would really save them a lot. Financial is always a setback for students, maybe if they want to further studies, and it always becomes like the main reason why a family is dysfunctional. So if the education, if the financial education can come at such a young age, maybe we have a center that provides consultancy in terms of financial education for children, because they need to know how to manage their finance, and they need to know that we have to start early. Yeah, because it is a journey, and yeah. And second thing is about and to add on to the point about the economic, about the financial education, because you also have highlighted that we are found, the Malay communities are found to have spent more than what we earn. So therefore, I see the importance of financially educating these youth. And the second thing is about education. Okay, education, I always see it related to unemployment. Even we as students, we realize that there is always like a glass ceiling to whatever we wish to major in. But I would like to address this thing about the glass ceiling. Okay, glass ceiling it depends on how you see the glass ceiling. It can be something that is like a setback for you, but you can always see it as something that is brittle and something that can be broken. So it's not a matter of maybe to raise the color. You should just do your best. If you know you are good at something, you should just work on something and just try to be the best. Let's just like be restless about this. And I believe that if you your main aim is to actually contribute back to the society, and then you wish to pursue on a certain field, I believe that there is always other professionals, other Malay, because I've seen a lot of successful Malay people who did make valuable contributions to the community, and I feel that they can be your mentors. So it's not a matter of like glass ceiling and that opportunities are closed. It's how you see the glass ceiling. So I hope that AMP can maybe give the youth to actually open up these doors, because I see this as a doors of opportunity. Because even today at this forum, I do not see a lot of youth coming up. Maybe because we are afraid to raise our issues, but if we do not raise our issues, the professionals or other people, like maybe from the political side, they do not know what we want. So how are they going to come up with policies that we want to have a better system, but we also make up the system. So if you do not highlight your views, give your suggestions, then there will be a desired system for you. So just if you believe in something, you have to take action and not just talk. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your insights as a younger member of the community. Thank you for that. Just a very quick reply. I think when we set up the parent schools and advisory center, financial management of families is something important, and hopefully we can take your comments That's one of the things we should look at. Sorry, I promise you the mic, but before that, any other members of the younger committee would like to say something relevant? Is it okay if I call out them first?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Zaki. I'm currently studying in Niat Polytechnic. I also represent the Niat Poly Muslim Student Society. Before anything, I want to ask you all, are you all proud to be Muslims? Because it seems like we have loosened our main purpose. I mean, what does it mean to be a Muslim? What is the role of our lives? I mean, being a youth, there's a lot that I've seen. My friends, I mean, we don't have to see far. During Ramadan Bazaar, we just go to Geylang. We can see all the youths there. You don't need, when you initiate such programs, are they going to come? Are those youths, the Malay youths that we see in Anak Metropolitan in Suria, are they going to come? So exactly how are we going to engage them? So being a youth, I want to say that being a Muslim, like what is our role of our lives? It seems that we have been blinded by a lot of this secularism to see that we have lost our purpose in life. And being a Muslim, we work for Allah, towards Allah, for Allah. And we know that we are doing everything for Him. And when we work towards only one goal, that is where we are not divided. Being Muslim, we can have AMP, we can have Naki, we can have all of these organizations working towards different and concentrating on different focuses on the society. Yes, but we must have one purpose. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder. Gentleman, and that will.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Harun. I'm a recent undergraduate from NUS. My points actually, I'm just going to take for the first two pillars first. In terms of resources, I think if MMOs in general really position themselves at a national level, I think what opens up is that you get national resources to curtail to the needs of your community as well. So I think that's one aspect which you need to look at. At the same time, with regards to the community forum, what I'm getting a feel of is that there's some duplication of resources at certain points. And I think if AMP wants to explore the community forum as part of its initiatives, it has to also make a conscious effort to know that there's no duplication of resources as well as duplication of efforts towards the same goal. I take the point which I think Mr. Azam mentioned earlier with regards to shining two torchlights on the same spot, it might be brighter. But collectively as a community, if let's say you have two torchlights, it might be more worthwhile for the community rather than to have one brighter spot versus having two slightly less brighter spots. It might benefit the community as a whole even better. With regards to the national young and emerging professionals, I think it's a perennial problem in that most of the time once we leave university, we disappear. And I think all of the Muslim organizations also have trouble in terms of recalibrating their leadership simply because the leadership at the youth level, be it at polytechnic or university, suddenly once they start working, they're no longer there. And you lose touch and subsequently you find difficulty replenishing your leadership. So in terms of initiating the young and emerging professionals, I think there needs to be a concerted effort. And like what Ms. Mohd said, resources are very little and you need to try and make a conscious effort because once you start the cycle going, what these young professionals can do is you can channel them towards motivating even younger crowd, the secondary school, the JCs, the diploma students, and basically get them up and running. Once you get the cycle going, eventually it becomes a system, it becomes ingrained in the community, and you get that self-replenishing cycle where you can churn and move forward as a community. At the start of the forum, at the start of the discussion, I sort of got a feel that there are a lot of underlying issues with regards to the history of the country, in terms of, let's say, discrimination, the SAF, and so on and so forth. But I feel that, like what the young lady said, quite a fair bit of it now, moving on 30, 40 years down the road, quite a fair bit of it is a class elite. This is what I encounter. I mean, my parents didn't go through university, pass O levels and so on, but I think there was enough opportunity for me as an individual and enough push from the system in that I wasn't put down by the system, and basically all you have to do is work as hard as you can, work your ass off, and eventually you get to where you want to be in future. Because at the end of the day, if let's say we are very much curtailed by this glass ceiling which we put ourselves, then the problem comes in that you'll never get ahead because that glass ceiling is yours to undo. If it's still in your mind that the glass ceiling is there, then you'll never reach for the stars and you'll forever be in that hole where you are. So I think in general the youth, you're like a white blanket, you see, because you don't know that there's a glass all you see is the stars. The glass ceiling never occurred to you until it's being put in your mind and you're being told that, hey, there's a glass ceiling, forget it, you won't reach for the stars. If that's going to be the kind of feeling that we youth get, and there's no optimism whatsoever, then we're trapped in the same place, and that's where we'll forever be, because we'll pass it on and on and on and on. I think it takes a shift of the mindset of the people who've been there, done that, gone through that experience, to inculcate in the youth that, look, all you have to do is push hard enough, and the world is your oyster. So, I mean, coming from me, it's a reason actually. Thanks.
Thank you. I think thoughts on this term. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
So my name is Shani. I guess I'll be in the category just below 30. Graduated from NUS about 5 years ago. So anyway, regarding the analogy about the issue we started off about distrusting and all that, I like to see our country as an analogy of a family. So if the government, our parents, and we have 4 siblings, like Chinese, Indian, Malay, others, and say the Chinese sibling doesn't trust the Malay sibling, does it work to tell the parent, tell the Chinese sibling to trust me? It doesn't work that way. You have to earn that trust. And historical issues aside, it's just that. So I work with a lot of youths as I'm a co-project director of Praxis. It's a collaboration between ELP and Mendaki, so it's an interesting sale on the fence. So in that, we deal a lot with perceptions. And working with the youth, we find a lot of perceptions they actually inherit from the parents. So like we just ask them, cold, like, okay, when you think of Malay community, what are the things you come about? And we've done it twice already. And the first things that will come up, Malays are lazy, Malays are ambitious, fatalistic, easygoing. And we are wondering, why is this so? And the funny thing is, the trainer that we engaged is Chinese, and he didn't know that about these perceptions until he was engaged with us for practice. So it is not something that we're getting from other Singaporeans. It's something that our community is thinking about ourselves. So I find this quite disturbing. So we intend to do a lot more work in that platform. So just wanted to share some thoughts on myself.
Interesting insights. It looks like the younger perspective seems to focus on what we can do. Your point about the glass ceiling, let's smash it, and what we can do to earn. I think it's complementary. I think not to say that one is more correct than the other. Sorry, I need to move over to the more senior part of the group and hand over the mic to Chief. I don't know that was really good. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. InsyaAllah kami on the capacity of a number of Allah, not as an MP. Okay, basically I'm a bit forced to give my point of view regarding the issue that was touched on CLF, AMP as well as other MMOs. See, basically from what I gathered as now, through my observation, Encik Izzuddin from 4PM himself trying to explain what has been done, or basically what MMOs have been done in terms of trying to go on the national issues. And Paul Modia also tried to justify that. And I believe 4PM, Mendaki as Secretary of CLF, as well as EMP, partner of CLF, I believe there's some miscommunication, or collaboration, if I can call it that. Basically, Mendaki being a secretary as well as EMPs and 4PM being partners, but yet there's some misagreement or some unsolved or unresolved issues. And I believe that this more or less to me reflects maybe the ineffectiveness of CLF itself. The one who leads the CLF. Because the platform of which CLF is on right now is a good platform. Okay, it's I believe movement in terms of the platform of congregation, Jama'ah, chapter is correct. Okay, bring all the partners together, okay, work together, and to effectively to collaborate. But from the way, as far as now I observe, there's still some miscommunication between the partners. So I believe the issue may lies in how the CLF is being structured and how the leaders in CLF are managing and administrating the whole forum. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts. I'm not so sure whether it's an issue of miscommunication or just that we have agreed to disagree on certain points regarding the CLF. But I think we covered that earlier on in the discussion. Sorry, can I go to the other side? No, you get your chance after this. Okay?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Muhammad Yusuf bin Osman, and I am representing myself. Just very limited for my stance here. Okay, I guess the whole issue of this MMO progress into new social spaces as key national level society players is, I very much agree with the way that AMP, the first thrust of this concept of repositioning MMO as an organization that engage on national inter-ethnic issues and oriented agenda. However, one point is that I think we are too fixated on labels. Labels of Malay Muslim organization, when this organization is Association of Muslim Professionals, and you are going to, and one good effort is to actually liaise with the Muslim Expectorate. My focus here is that as we want to focus on third thrust, initiate a National Young and Emerging Professionals Forum. Now let's learn the psyche of the young generation. Okay, let's say you want to get the young generation ready to contribute back to society. Then there must be some purposeful drive, not because of the organization, but who are you actually serving? I think most of us, I don't know, I guess so, for most people of my generation and maybe my parents' generation, we do not really understand what are the roles of each MMOs. And I heard from a few of us senior leaders of MMOs that they are a bit tight on resources, right? That's a problem. That's a problem that we have to focus on making use of the resources to ensure that we are able to solve issues hands-on. Now, what are the issues facing our society? Basically, I would say, firstly, economic. Secondly, the issue of Jama'ah. My sense is that you just observe how does the Chinese community they have moral Taekwondo society, they have the Lee Foundation, and there is a strong camaraderie back then among the pioneers, setting up corporations, foundation to help and assist future generation in causes like, for example, education. Who take care of education in Singapore for the Malay Muslim community? It is Mendaki, right? And then why does EMP encroach to Mendaki's role? How does then the argument would be because issue of collaboration, more hands is better to lighten the workload. But that's not the point. We are missing the point. The whole point here is, let's say you only have 10 people doing the same things. Now you are just dividing it into two and making it as though there's a lots and lots of people who are working on the issue. But the whole point is that are all these effective, efficient? So my first point on this issue of repositioning MMOs as organization. First, I guess the MMOs then themselves have to rethink properly and really give us the community really what do you really stand for? Who do you actually serve? If you say family, what type of family? Okay, if you want to go on national or inter-ethnic issues oriented agenda, then the positioning of the issues plays a vital role. Is it Is it you're going to serve only Malay Muslim community issues, or you are going to help the needy who happens to be a Malay Muslim families? Right? That is extremely important, so that we can economize on the use of resources too. And then formalization of community forum, I guess, is a waste of time. Discussion after discussion, and there are still issues cropping up. Well, issues are here. God gave us issues to test us, I believe. So, but I do not think that another forum is needed. What we need in our community is actually those people who can integrate their ideas to action. Now, the whole point here is, I'm not sure whether the people here knew, the NUS itself has a research department, the Malay Studies department. As an undergraduate back then in university, I was always thinking about this. We have the NUS Malay Studies department, and NUS have a large repository of libraries, people who do research, proper research, with a good resources on hand to actually research on our issues. Even the sociology department, well, I'm a graduate of sociology, and we did research on communities as part of our studies. So why don't we just tap on this academic talent, make this theoretical understanding of our community alive in the various MMOs? I mean, MMOs don't need to repeat, you see. Repeat a study of, Mendaki have a research department, AMD have a research department. I don't know about the other organization, whether they have a research department, but what are the KPIs of this research department? Are there anyone who are able and willing to actually execute this into actions? That's the key point, because the whole point is talk too much. We talk too much is okay. We talk too much, but we never delve into what we have talked about. We keep repeating the issue of national service. I know the issues of discrimination. When? After I graduated from secondary 4. Before that, my closest friend in secondary school was Chinese. And we still keep in contact. There's no issue of discrimination amongst us. Until I went to Polytechnic, then I went into the Temasek Polytechnic Malay Arts Group. I learned a lot about all these issues, all the Malay issues to me. After that, I went to NUS Muslim Society. I learned terrible concepts fits into the ideas of the young people. I think this one, sorry, very low. Okay. So my whole point is that firstly, MMOs need to rethink their purpose in existence. It's extremely important, okay, to make sure people are engaged. And how do they be focused is to actually explicitly describe, who are their target audience, the focus that they are going to focus on, and compare and contrast each of their other objectives. You see whether are there any duplication of effort whatsoever. Remember, their resources are only 10. If you divide by 5, 2 each is still the same anyway. Secondly, formalization. Let me summarize. Formalization of community forum, I think, really need to rethink on that. And the National Young and Emerging Professional, I will agree with the down there. It's a matter of mentoring scheme to ensure that you open the opportunity for the youth. So, meaning we have the cert, but how do we make use of the cert, open opportunities for us? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your frank views. At this stage, I know we have a very heated and lively discussion and some frank views, which I think is a good thing, and that was to be expected when we have a forum called Leadership in Civil Society. Can I just go over the ladies before you? So I got 1, 2, and then you. And I think by that time probably would be at 12:30 and we have to break for lunch. And I explain why in a short while.
Very quick point actually. I think it's important that we all understand that CLF goes beyond Mendaki and AMP, right? As today we have about CLF, it's a social space where we have partners, over 90 partners coming in from both within and beyond the Malay Muslim voluntary sector. Partners consist of schools. Okay, we have PCF, we have the MMOs, we have the BWOs, we have the FSCs. correct, MACs, CDCs. So I think it basically looks at beyond, both Mendaki and AMP. I think what's also important is that considering that we have 90 over partners, it's important that we also hear from our MMO partners, especially like Mr. Izzuddin and Madam Satyamula, on their perception or views on how CLF can improve. Perhaps collaboratively then we can work together. So I think in this whole convention of AMP Mendaki is to sort of, move forward towards a more progressive, constructive discussion on how we can work together.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sapya, I'm president of PPIN. So I would like to comment on the MMOs. Okay, I think we need to know the MMOs have a very long history. In fact, like PPIN has 60 years of history, Jamia. And why MMOs are, normally MMO is established because of the need to help the disadvantaged families. And there's plenty of community, we all know. So the focus of MMOs is, if you look around, is more to provide services to these disadvantaged families. So I think we ought to do that. We have to continue to do that. Otherwise, who will help these people? And I think even AMP, when need to have this kind of services. And for MMO to be repositioned, as I said, I think we need clarification because what I hear from Nizam is that you want us to speak up on national issues and so on. And I think not every MMO has that resources and capability. Because to be able to speak up, we need the backup of research, we need thinkers, who will want to join us, and those who are really very articulate in certain issues. So I think to expect MMO to become spokesman for the community, maybe there are limitations. I have to be honest about that. Even PPIP, we want to be the voice of women, but sometimes we have limited resources in research and all that. We have to sometimes have to hold back a bit on that. So I feel that why not for this to engage on national issues? Maybe there should be concerted together. We have to do it together. Not that every MMO reposition and become, make a comment on national issues. As for the MMO services itself, we are actually get a lot of resources from the government. I think many of us have a lot of centers and all that, and I think we got resources from the government, and we are open to other ethnic groups. The only thing is that because our community is overwhelmed, the numbers of that need help is overwhelmed. It looks like MMOs is only helping the Malays, but we do have non-Malays. For example, our we have also have non-Malays who come to us. So that's I think my comment.
Thank you for your thoughts. Can you do Firdaus and then to Dr. Hussain?
Assalamualaikum. My name is Firdaus. I'm a student now, graduate program, but I was working with Mr. Yaakob at MCYS. I also volunteer with Mendaki. I was also involved with EFP. I'd like to say that I'm not here to stand and dictate what EFP or Mendaki or MMO should do. Actually, to be honest, I know where I stand. You are elders, you have been doing this for far longer than I have, and you have done a lot more good work than I can possibly aim to achieve. So actually, I just like to say and appreciate all the work that the organizations and MMOs and PPIS and POPIA have all done over the last few decades. One thing I think we're talking about is civil society. Yes, when there are multiple programs looking at maybe, for example, minor marriages, then all the different hands that we can get into the problem would help. That is not a problem. Shining more light on it will make it brighter. That is not a problem. And that's why I don't see a problem if Pump 4 does that. But I see a problem when we're talking about fractured leadership. And I think that's something that is a bit absent here. Maybe it's a small point. I think it's gained a sore point in the last two conventions, and we're not really talking about that, but we hear it all over the place. Fractured leadership. And it affects our morale as a community. Who do we look to be our spokesperson? Who is the one that is going to dictate this is what we're going to achieve and we're going to follow that? We have many different organizations. Maybe that's a result of baggage over the last few years. I mean, I wouldn't know. But I personally feel that this fractured leadership affects the youth. We will see, and why is everything so fractured? Why is there Mr. Yaakob and the amount of support he gets, and then the Workers' Party MP, and then you have MMO presidents, and you have CLF, and you have Pongfor and Nizam? Why sometimes everything goes conflicting? And as a youth, I feel, so which team should I sign up on, And that doesn't really help for youth. So I know it's a touchy point, but I thought if we don't even try to talk about it today, and then when else are we going to talk about it? So thank you very much. I'm sorry, I don't have any answers.
No answers, but valid points.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Hussein Tariq. As an individual, although as you know, I was in the bench together with a couple of people here who actually formed me in 1990. Today, I speak as an individual. I see tremendous value in the propositions today. I must say that I have no input at all in the formulation of the convention. Just come to just see the progress of the community and to give support that is needed for the community. Let me see how, tell you how I see the value in that. Just 2 points on the 2 columns that I propose. Repositioning MNOs as organizations engaging the national interests. The value is this. By forcing this kind of new orientation, you are seeing to the blames of the community. It is time your issues must be seen within the framework of broader national concerns. It has to be in Singapore. Because if you don't do that, you will continue to be very parochial, frog in the well all the time, and you lose a lot of resources, expertise, alternative views, and so on. So forcing Malay Muslim organizations into this new higher level of national debates, national discourses, really very, very, very important. Having said that, and seeing the value, I somewhat disagree, and personally, actually, I've been speaking very personal things on these issues for a long time. I think the Muslim organizations are not really. I disagree when people say that they have done a lot of engagements at the national level and influencing and very effective and giving feedback to the national political elite so that there were better policies for the community. But they are not really, believe me. I have worked for 30 years, right until all the community meetings involving permanent secretaries, ministers, lots and lots. It's not easy. So in as much as I appreciate, this is not a critique of the tremendous value that Malay Muslim organizations for years have done. They've done tremendous work, Damia and all the others. But you are really talking about engaging national leadership. You're talking about the quality of top leaders. This is where I value and appreciate the chairperson of PBS who acknowledge, agree with her. You have representation in Malay Muslim organizations in major national bodies, but what kind of representation? You're not talking about attending committees, giving a bit of views here and there, filling up data, saying a bit about the feelings of the community. You are talking about competencies at the highest level of national discourse and narrative. It's not easy. Very few people can do that. The government knows this. The government invites less than half a dozen Malay Muslim leaders in top discussions. I know this. Because you are really, you need thought leaders to shape policies and politics. You do not need, or you cannot have ordinary Malay leaders in organizations to sit in this top boards. The influence will be very minimal, believe me. So, I see the value, but I see the problem. The problem is, where do you get the people? So you really got to find, niches of select groups of people in the community, reasonably good profile, clean, people of integrity, capable, competent, who can influence. So that's one. Second, I see the value for the community forum. I see the value. For a lot of reasons, I appreciate Mendaki has done a lot. We all know this. But then, like, what Nizam mentioned, when ALP was formed in 1990, the same complaints that people mentioned now were raised 20 years ago. Why another one? But you see what ALP has done after 20 years. Are we saying that ALP's existence now after 20 years is a waste of time? That we are duplicating resources? That we are not helping the community? That more hands are not useful? So I think let's give AMPS a chance to prove itself. Let's have this community forum. Because in as much as Mendaki has done a lot, Mendaki is severely limited in many, many things. The approach of the community forum is really good approach. Let's have good ideas, alternative views, diverse opinions. Let's share for the benefit of the community. This open, transparent, frank approach is in sync with the situation of Singapore today. After the general elections, we all know that the government encourages diversity, alternatives. Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew, former Prime Minister, present Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, also went public to say, let better ideas prevail. Give the MP a chance to offer its opportunities, because its platform will be much bigger and wider and less inhibited. It values opinions from lots of segments of the community. This is not a critique of Mendaki at all. This should be seen as another opportunity for better ideas to be thrown to the committee, discussed, so that overall everybody will benefit. So I see the values, I see some challenges, but I really would like to support and I hope we give the MP a chance to prove itself. If it doesn't work, let's review it, but give it a chance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It actually was a very wonderful way of summing up the discussions, synergizing the various points. Sorry, I think we need to close the session because of time constraints. I think let's just try to synergize at this point. In relation to the first strategy of encouraging MMOs to go to the national space, I accept the views of some of the MMOs. Some of it has been done in some way. It is a good thing, generally I sense. There might be capacity issues. But I think the point, as Zul mentioned earlier, is this, that we leave it to MMOs to decide to what extent they want to go to the national space. The proposition is that there is you when you engage beyond just community-centric issues, when you take a broader horizon, because a lot of the issues at that broader horizon impact us. I think, like I mentioned earlier, the original intention was for EMP to do that, and I think we will continue to do that, and we invite others to join in that direction as well. As for COM4, I think there's been some early debates. I think there were very strong views, I think on both sides. Some see the value of having this platform to complement CLF. I think that's where we were coming from. I accept the views of, I think, particularly Mendaki, that CLF is there for a purpose. But I think, like Dr. Hussein said, looking back at when we were from the first convention, looking at where EMP is right now, we've reached out to about 260,000 beneficiaries, $75 million of funds were raised and channeled back to the community. I like to think we have value added to the community. I like to think that this convention value adds to the community over when about the CLF, that also value adds to the community. I think we sense a different set of issues that are being discussed here in this very deliberately council approach. We accept that CLF has got certain constraints. We respect that. We may disagree on the way that it is being approached, but EMP still remains supportive of it. We are a committed partner, but let's look at this as complementary, many helping hands approach. I thank you for Dr. Hussein for saying, please give us a chance. And I would like to think that we would like to try this out, and if it doesn't work, then let's review this. Okay? And for youth, I think, yes, I think we get some feedback that some of it has been done, but I think the sense that I get is that people support the idea. Again, for youth, the tendency is for them to want to follow or pursue their own interest groups, we should go and find, but we need an overarching network as to how we can, overall improve or empower them further. Now, please correct me if I mischaracterize any part of my summary. Okay? If not, I thank you sincerely for your